us with our conversation now talking about transparency and accountability in government. We're joined on virtually by Yahaya Bello, who's the media executive. Yahaya, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Ebuka. It's good to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Now, I want to start off very quickly. We started the conversation a little earlier in the earlier segment I had on Governor Yahaya Bello. And I want to talk, first of all, about the sitting governor who allegedly, that's a very, very important word to be noted, that was whisked away from his residence in Abuja. And, of course, because of the immunity he had, the EFCC claimed they couldn't, approach. Explain that scenario to us and why that is important and how legal that was.
I mean, it's a complete abuse of office, a complete abuse of power, and it's unacceptable that the governor would behave in the manner in which he had behaved. It was incumbent on him not to have intervened or at least disrupted the process of arrest that the EFCC were about to do on the former governor of Kogi State. It was quite an unfortunate situation that could have escalated to a point where there could have been a shootout that would have left many unnecessarily dead or injured at the very least. So, such kinds of intervention from a democratically elected governor, to disrupt a reputable government agency, from arresting somebody who had clearly be invited by the agency, I think is unacceptable and is something that we shouldn't tolerate in our country.
I mean, there's also people who are wondering that, is the EFCC, if they really want to arrest him, they would have. I mean, he did have security operatives around him. Why was there no order, for those people to effect the arrest? The Inspector General of Police, we hear, withdrew his security operatives. Where was the order for them to arrest him? Next thing, we see a poster saying wanted, So a lot of Nigerians are wondering, is this just all a show? Is this actually serious? Has the whole scenario, you think, been handled professionally?
Well, to be honest, I do not think that it's been handled professionally. And again, that's the complexity of the Nigerian situation, where a lot of people, it's a bit like an Orwellian state, where a few people believe that they are above the law and simply cannot be arrested by security agencies, irrespective of the crimes that they have alleged to have committed. And that's quite a pitiful situation, if you ask me, especially given, the state of our country, as we currently are living in it at the very moment. So like you rightfully said, if indeed you wanted him arrested, there were policemen on duty who could have received orders from the Inspector General of Police to effectively, place the former governor under arrest. You will recall that, the current governor who came in with a cavalry of some sort to save the former governor also came in with a team of policemen who also are supposed to be under orders from the Inspector General of Police and rather participated in disrupting the arrest of the former governor. So it's quite a laughable, shambolic situation, if you asked me. And I don't think that we do ourselves any honors as this plays out across the entire world. We play out like a country that has no respect for the rule of law, that has no respect for institutions, and really and truly, have no respect for the Nigerian people. And if we treat ourselves in this manner and we vulgarize our own institutions in this manner, it's a bit asking for too much for people across the world to respect you or to respect your country.
I'll come back to you, Ayodele. We're also joined by Shinwa Obenle, who's a public policy and development professional. I want to ask you, Shin, sort of leading on from the last question I just had, because we're talking about transparency and accountability in government. And with this particular government, there seems to be, a show of the fact that there's a fight against corruption and accountability. We've seen what's happening with the former central bank governor, Godwin Emefiele, with this Kogi State situation as well. But you also wonder, is the message sort of coherent, which is what I just asked earlier? You know, when you saw the EFCC chairman give that passionate sort of press briefing, talking about all the things that had happened with the Kogi State, with the former Kogi State governor, I beg your pardon, do you get a sense that, you know, these security institutions are not aligned in their messaging, which is why the IG, for example, does not tell his people to effect this arrest. Instead, he withdraws them. Or do you think this is just to give us an impression that something important is happening?
Well, I don't think it is just to create an impression. I do actually think that government has a commitment to corruption. I understand that usually as Nigerians, we have a penchant for being cynical about everything. You know, we hardly see anything good even about ourselves. But to be fair, I think sometimes we actually need to give ourselves we need to give ourselves some commendation wherever we make progress. I think that EFCC is genuinely trying to prosecute corruption. I think that they are genuinely trying to see that you know, they get the Kogi debacle to a very logical conclusion. I also see an EFCC chairman that looks to be alive to his responsibility and is actually committed to getting it done. But of course, you know, we are actually in a democracy, and it's a rule of law act, in fact, where you know, you have to actually follow the rule of law. You know, this is not a military rule; it's not military dictatorship where you can just arrest people and put them in jail. So you have to follow processes. You must obey court orders, and that's what you have here. Of course, the EFCC is equally handicapped because I mean, people can exploit the weaknesses in our laws, and I think that more importantly, the most important lesson that we have seen from the Yahaya Bello debacle is that there are actually weaknesses in our laws, and it calls for an amendment of those laws so that our laws can be tighter, they can be stronger, and they can empower EFCC to be able to do a lot more. And I think it's actually a learning curve even for EFCC, as it is a learning curve for Nigeria as well. So I do think that, of course, the government is trying to prosecute corruption. But one of the points you did raise was on the point about you know, the lack of collaboration and synergy between the internal security architecture. I think we have successfully you know, delegated the work of fighting corruption to the FCC, which I don't think it should be. I think there should be internal intelligence sharing among all the internal security architecture. And I think that if we had that, if we had the very strong collaboration, and I think this is where the NSA does come in. The other day we had the counterterrorism summit, which of course was about Africa. But this time, I think that one of the things the NSA should be looking at should be to see how it's able to bring about more synergy between all the internal security, between the internal security architecture. And I think that's one of the major problems that we have, if you ask me. And this is not the first time this is happening. We've seen this happen with Okorocha. We've seen this happen several times in the past. Where it's either the EFCC versus DSS or the DSS versus the police, and I mean it's a shame. I mean this should not be happening. So I think that the president needs to weigh in and needs to weigh in, and more importantly, the NSA must actually must speak to the security chiefs and everybody who is managing security at all levels of governance. There must be collaboration and there must be internal security. There must be internal intelligence sharing. I think if we had that, we would not have had what happened in the case of Yahaya Bello. It's unfortunate to see, but of course, I believe that the government is strong-willed, and eventually, Yahaya Bello will turn himself up.
But considering, I mean, the sorts of amounts we've heard with the Kogi State governor, of course, and just when we hear corruption cases in Nigeria, we're no longer talking the millions anymore. It's ridiculous amounts of money that the country actually needs, which means the level of patience. You mentioned Okorocha there. That was 6 years ago. We're at a point where if we've not learned from these things, why are we still at the point where we're trying to figure this collaboration out? I mean, should we still be at this point?
Well, no, we shouldn't. Of course, I agree with you. But what we must also understand is that change and progress is incremental. It is not radical. It is actually going to be day by day building bricks and mortar of progress. And I think that we're gradually making that progress. But more importantly, I think that this is where the NSA does come in. It needs to show a strong will at this point. We shouldn't be talking about this in 20 because it has happened before. It is happening again, and it is unfortunate. It is unfortunate that we are seeing this repeat itself. But of course, this is testing our resolve as a country. It's testing our laws. It is testing our rule of law. So we must then take the learnings from here. Is that we must then see how we are able to empower EFCC. We are able to tighten our laws so that people are not able to exploit our laws to get away. In the case of Yahaya Bello, it shouldn't be happening. It's unfortunate. But of course, we must also acknowledge that progress is a continuum, it's not a destination, and that for every moment where you have events like this, it is a learning. It is a key learning for us to take away and then see what we're able to do about it.
Okay, let me quickly get back to Ayodele now, because I just want to get his final thoughts on this. Ayodele, if you can hear me. We've seen the case with the former CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele. We're seeing what's happening with the Kogi State governor. The EFCC, basically, especially this year, has been quite busy, even with celebrities and all of that. Is it giving you a sense, that things are looking different? Is it a different kind of EFCC you think we're seeing recently?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of motion. There's been a lot of movement. But there's still a long road ahead. When every administration comes into office, there is usually this fire you see from the EFCC. They are trying to arrest, people are accused of corrupt practices. There's a lot of movement here and there, if you like, some sort of show of strength from the EFCC. So I mean, we've been on this journey before. We've seen this movie before. We know how it ends. The difference here is we hope that this is sustained and this is free, from political colorations, and they stay the course. And more importantly, that they play by the rule of law, because you really and truly cannot effect change outside the legal framework that is supposed to also guide you as an institution. So the EFCC has to also reform itself internally to begin to play by the books, to respect the fundamental rights, of citizens, to go about its business and activities within the legal framework, and hopefully to also build the capacity of its men and its capacity of its legal team to better prosecute many of the cases that it handles, so that it can eventually improve on its conviction rates, especially amongst the political class. So at the moment, it's not a eureka moment. I'm not too quick to applaud their efforts. It's early in the day. I'd like to see this sustained over a considerable period of time. Because you and I know, my brother, there's a lot of corruption that has happened over the last 8 years. We need to see those brought to book.
Thank you very much, Ayodele. Thank you very much. This is definitely an ongoing conversation. We're definitely watching the EFCC and all government organizations or institutions that are supposed to help in this fight against corruption and the fight for transparency and accountability in government. So hopefully we'll call you back very soon. Thanks for joining us.